Hey everyone, this is Bunny. As I settle in with my miniatures and my brush today, I want to spend some time talking about something that sits at the very center of Dungeons and Dragons. Not in any rule book and not in any edition, but in the shared heartbeat of every table that's ever gathered to roll dice together. Today, while we paint, I want to explore the spirit of adventure. Why it is, where it comes from, and why it stays with us long after the campaign ends. So get cozy, pull your minis close, and let's wander into that imaginative space where adventure begins. Adventure doesn't start with combat or quests or ancient maps. It starts with curiosity. The moment you begin imagining a character, their fears, their hopes, their strengths, their secret insecurities, you're already stepping onto the path of adventure. Even before the campaign begins, your imagination has already taken its first steps. That spark is small, but it's powerful. It's the seed that grows into the entire journey. People sometimes imagine adventure as something big, dragons and curses and kings begging for help, kingdoms in peril. And sure, those things exist. But the true spirit of adventure lives in the small things. The way the players react to a surprising dice roll, the way someone's voice changes when they slip into their character, the moment the party collectively gasps at a twist the DM didn't even plan. Those little moments, those shared sparks, are the real fuel of adventure. When you sit down at a D&D table, you're stepping into a tradition of imagination that stretches back decades. Generations of players have gathered around different tables in different countries, using different editions, but the feeling is the same. The moment the DM starts describing a world, something in your mind opens. You lean forward, you listen, you wonder. The spirit of adventure takes hold quietly but firmly, and the world becomes more than words. The funny thing about adventures is that they rarely go the way anyone expects. DMs plan and players scheme, dice roll, but something always changes. That unexpected shift is where adventure thrives. It's where the story grows new branches, where characters deepen, where jokes turn into legends. Even painting surprises you sometimes. Colors blend in ways you didn't expect, and highlights pop brighter than planned, and textures emerge that you didn't know were there. Both painting and D&D remind us that creativity isn't perfect. It's alive. Adventure also reveals who we are, how we react to risk, how we treat allies, how we face setbacks. When you choose what your character does next, fight, negotiate, retreat, or maybe investigate, you're expressing something subtle about yourself. Not literally, but emotionally. And the spirit of adventure thrives in that expression. It gives you space to explore parts of yourself that you might not normally access. Early editions of D&D were full of chaos. Wild tables, unpredictable rulings, rough edges everywhere. But inside that chaos, players found something magical. Room to imagine without boundaries. That feeling never disappeared. Even the most modern edition still carries that wild spark. The rules shape the structure, but the adventure? That's yours. Your table, your choices, your creativity. As I lay down paint on this miniature, I'm thinking about how adventure grows from the smallest brushstrokes. A bit of shadow here, a gleam there, a soft gradient where you didn't expect it to be. None of these things feel dramatic, but together they form something meaningful. Campaigns work the same way. 100 small decisions add up to something unforgettable. Adventure also thrives on imperfection. Perfect plans rarely create the best stories. It's the missteps, the failure, the improvised moments that stick with us. A botched stealth roll leads to chaos. A natural 1 on a persuasion check sparks a hilarious feud. A spell that fizzles creates a brand new problem. Those imperfections become texture, something real, something alive. and the spirit of adventure embraces that texture fully. One of the most powerful things about D&D is trust. Every time you sit down with a group, you're trusting them with your imagination. You're trusting them to listen, to participate, to support, to collaborate. That trust forms the foundation of every great campaign. Without it, adventure feels hollow. With it, adventure becomes vibrant, unpredictable, and deeply rewarding. Adventure isn't always dramatic. Some of the best moments are quiet, sitting around a campfire, sharing stories with NPCs, exploring forgotten corners of a town, uncovering secrets slowly. These gentle moments shape the emotional core of a campaign. They give you time to breathe, time to connect, time to imagine. The spirit of adventure doesn't rush. It lingers, allowing moments to settle. When you paint, you learn patience. Layers take time. Shading takes time. Detail work takes time. You can't force it. Adventure teaches that same lesson. Stories unfold at the pace they need to. Characters grow when they're ready. Worlds reveal themselves slowly through exploration. The spirit of adventure rewards those who let the journey unfold naturally rather than push towards an endpoint. As campaigns evolve, adventure changes flavor. The early sessions are filled with excitement and novelty. Later sessions deepen into emotional investment. By the end, adventure takes on a bittersweet tone, warmth mixed with nostalgia. That emotional arc is one of the reasons D&D stories stay with us. They feel lived in. They feel earned. In painting, the early strokes feel bold and undefined. Later, everything sharpens. By the end, you're only adding tiny accents, but those accents give the miniature its soul. Adventures evolve in the same way. What begins with broad strokes becomes rich with detail. Adventure is also a celebration of creativity. Every player brings something only they can contribute. Humor or ideas, dramatic flair, tactical insight, maybe emotional resonance. No two people imagine the same way. The spirit of adventure gathers all of those unique contributions and weaves them into something bigger than any individual. Even when things go wrong, and in D&D they often do, the adventure continues. Characters pick themselves up. Parties regroup. Stories shift direction. And somehow, through all of that, the world becomes deeper, more interesting. That resilience is part of what makes adventure feel so real. Adventure invites you to explore, to ask questions, to push beyond what you know. It encourages curiosity. And curiosity is the spark that keeps imagination alive. Whether you're exploring a forgotten ruin or experimenting with a new paint technique, that sense of curiosity is the beating heart of the experience. Adventure doesn't demand expertise. It welcomes beginners. It welcomes mistakes. It welcomes experimentation. All it asks is that you show up with a willingness to imagine. And as long as you do, the spirit of adventure will always be there, ready to lead you somewhere new. Adventure adapts as you grow, not just as a player, but as a person. When you first sit down to play D&D, the world feels massive. Every monster is terrifying. Every mystery is overwhelming. Every choice feels monumental. But the more you play, the more you understand how your decisions shape the journey. You begin to realize that adventure isn't just about the world being big. It's about the story feeling meaningful. And that meaning grows deeper the more you invest yourself in it. Painting miniatures follows a similar path. When you're new, every color choice feels risky. Every brushstroke feels like it could make or break the whole mini. But as time goes on, your confidence grows. What once felt intimidating becomes comforting. The miniature stops feeling like an obstacle and starts feeling like an opportunity. That shift mirrors the way adventures evolve. What begins with uncertainty becomes a source of joy and creativity. Adventure also thrives in unpredictability. You can plan as much as you like, scripts and strategies, storylines and paint schemes, but something always shifts when imagination enters the room. A player says something that changes the direction of a scene. A natural 20 turns disaster into triumph. A monster flees instead of fighting. A color dries differently than expected. These little surprises don't ruin the adventure. They are the adventure. They're the moments you look back on with fondness. Some of the most powerful D&D moments are the ones no one saw coming. A character who was meant to be comic relief becomes the emotional core of the party. A random NPC becomes a long-term ally. A minor encounter becomes a defining moment of the campaign. The spirit of adventure loves these twists. It grows strongest in the places where expectation gives way to possibility. Painting, too, invites improvisation. Maybe you plan to paint the cloak red, but suddenly feel drawn to blue. Maybe the highlight you added turns out brighter than expected, and you decide to lean into it. Maybe you make a mistake that leads to a brand new idea. Adventure thrives in those moments of spontaneity. It reminds us that creativity is fluid, not rigid. One of the most beautiful things about D&D is how it encourages players to explore different aspects of themselves. You might play a bold warrior when you're usually cautious. You might play a quiet cleric when you're usually outspoken. You might play someone charming or grumpy or wise or completely chaotic. Adventure gives you permission to step into different versions of yourself, even if only for a few hours a week. It can be freeing, healing, or simply fun. Painting also reveals new facets of who you are. Maybe you discover you have a steady hand for tiny details. Maybe you realize you love shading more than highlighting. Maybe you find that creating color palettes brings you joy. Adventure celebrates that self-discovery. It welcomes your growth. Adventure has a long memory. Even when a campaign ends, the stories linger. Years later, you'll still remember that Nat 1 that turned a negotiation into a brawl. The boss fight where everyone rolled terribly until that one final miracle moment. The NPC who wormed their way into your hearts. The pet you rescued halfway through the story. These memories stay with you because adventure leaves emotional imprints. Miniatures do that too. When you look at a mini you painted long ago, you don't just see the paint. You see the character. You see the campaign. You see the laughter and the tension, the imagination that you poured into them. The miniature becomes a tiny time capsule of adventure. Adventure is also an equalizer. At the table, everyone contributes something different. Some are strategists, some are actors, some are storytellers, some are comedic relief. Some listen more than they speak, and some take charge. Some support from the background. Every style is valid, and every style enriches the story. The spirit of adventure doesn't demand uniformity. It celebrates diversity. Painting also accepts every style. Some people dry brush everything. Some layer meticulously. Some glaze. Some edge highlight. Some paint fast and loose, and others paint with surgical precision. There's no wrong way. The spirit of adventure whispers the same thing in your ear. Your way is enough. Another beautiful truth about adventure is that it teaches resilience. When things go wrong, and they will, adventure encourages you to keep going. A failed roll leads to a new plan. A lost battle leads to a new approach. A character setback leads to emotional depth. That resilience is one of the core lessons D&D imparts. The journey matters because it teaches you to adapt. Adventure also thrives in emotion. Not just the epic emotions, fear, victory, and triumph, but the gentler ones. Curiosity, camaraderie, quiet pride, shared laughter. Those emotions weave the threads that hold a campaign together. They make the world feel real. They make the characters feel alive. As the story deepens, adventure becomes something shared. It's no longer just your experience, it's a collective one. Your choices affect others. Their choices affect you. The story becomes a tapestry woven from different imaginations, different voices, different hearts. No two campaigns are ever the same because no two groups build the same tapestry. Adventure loves connection. It grows stronger every time people come together to create something magical out of nothing but imagination. And that is one of the most enduring truths about Dungeons & Dragons. Adventure does not live in the books or the rules or the minis. It lives in you. It lives in the sparks of creativity you bring to the table. It lives in the choices you make. It lives in the stories you dare to tell. Adventure is also deeply shaped by the unknown. The moment you walk into a dungeon and open a mysterious letter or meet a stranger on the road, you're stepping into uncertainty. That uncertainty isn't something to fear. It's something to welcome. It's the pulse that keeps the story alive. If everything were predictable, if every twist could be seen from miles away, the adventure would lose its spark. The spirit of adventure thrives when you lean into mystery with curiosity rather than anxiety. Some of the richest stories in D&D come from moments of genuine surprise. Players uncover secrets the DM didn't expect them to find. The party negotiates with a monster they were supposed to fight. A planned villain becomes sympathetic. A random roll reveals a treasure that no one expected. These surprises remind everyone at the table that the world is alive, changing in response to their actions. The spirit of adventure is most vibrant when the game feels like a conversation rather than a script. Painting can feel like a conversation too. You try something, the miniature responds, and you adjust. Maybe the blend isn't smooth enough, so you soften it. Maybe the metal looks too dull, so you add a bit of gloss. Maybe the color feels flat, so you enrich it. You're constantly interpreting, reacting, adjusting, just like in a game. Adventure also thrives on collaboration. The best D&D stories aren't created by one person. They're co-created. The DM lays the foundation, but the players bring it to life. They add personality, unpredictability, humor, drama, and heart. Everyone at the table becomes part of a shared act of creation. The spirit of adventure flourishes when each person contributes something essential. Adventure is also a testament to imagination. D&D worlds are built from descriptions and gestures, tones and atmosphere. They're constructed from the imagination of the DM and animated by the imaginations of the players. No two people picture the same worlds exactly the same way. And that's part of the wonder. Adventure celebrates those differences. It's a playground where imagination doesn't have to match. It just has to flow. One of the most powerful aspects of adventure is the sense of becoming. Characters don't start as heroes. They start as uncertain, flawed, inexperienced individuals. Through the journey, they grow into themselves. Their stories expand. Their identities sharpen. That sense of becoming is one of the most compelling parts of D&D. It mirrors the ways we humans grow. Slowly, imperfectly, and through challenges and triumphs. Miniatures also go through a process of becoming. They start unpainted and undefined. They have potential, but not a lot of presence. As you paint them, layer by layer, highlight by highlight, they come into focus. They gain personality. They gain weight. They gain story. The process of turning blank plastic into a vibrant character mirrors the emotional arc of a D&D adventure. Adventure also asks players to invest emotionally. You don't need to come to a table with deep backstories or dramatic voices, but you do need to care. Caring is what turns a series of encounters into a story. Caring is what makes victories exciting and failures meaningful. The spirit of adventure responds to emotional investment like a plant responds to sunlight. It grows. Another beautiful truth about adventure is that it teaches compromise. Parties don't always agree. Characters don't always get what they want. Players need to work together to find solutions. Compromise doesn't weaken the story, it strengthens it. It leads to collaboration and empathy and unexpected outcomes. The spirit of adventure thrives when people learn to share the narrative space with generosity. Painting teaches compromise in subtler ways. Maybe a color combination you wanted is just not working, so you shift direction. Maybe the effect you envisioned isn't achievable with your current tools, so you adapt. Maybe the mini itself guides your choices. Compromise doesn't diminish creativity, it shapes it. Adventure also deepens through lore. World building gives campaigns anchor points, cultures and histories, myths and secrets. You don't need to know everything about a world for it to feel real. You just need enough to spark your imagination. The spirit of adventure loves those contextual hints. They give players room to wander, to infer, to connect. Miniatures gain depth from lore too. When you paint a mini with awareness of the world it comes from, its culture, its story, or even its faction, you paint with intention. The color choices and textures begin to mean something. That meaning makes the miniature feel alive. Adventure also honors emotion. It makes space for joy and sorrow, vulnerability, triumph, anger, curiosity, confusion, and wonder. A good campaign welcomes all of these emotions without judgment. The spirit of adventure knows that stories are strongest when they touch the full spectrum of human feeling. Painting is emotional as well. There's joy in finishing a mini, frustration when a technique doesn't work, pride when something turns out beautifully, calm focus during the process, surprise when a color combination exceeds expectation. Creativity always stirs emotion, and that emotion enriches the final result. Adventure also embraces transformation, not just of characters, but of stories themselves. A campaign that begins with lighthearted exploration can slowly shift into something more dramatic. A grim, serious adventure can naturally evolve into one filled with humor and heart. The tone of a campaign isn't fixed. It adapts to the players, the world, and the unpredictable journey the table takes together. The spirit of adventure welcomes that evolution. It understands that stories breathe, change, and grow. Painting understands transformation too. A miniature rarely looks impressive in the first few layers. Early stages can look muddy, flat, or even discouraging. But as more layers go on, more highlights, more shading, more shaping, more washes, the figure gains clarity. It becomes what it was meant to be. The transformation mirrors the evolution of an adventure. What starts as potential becomes something vivid and meaningful through time and attention. Adventure thrives on presence. When you play D&D, you leave the real world behind for a while. Not permanently, not in an escapist way, but in a gentle, restorative sense. You step into a shared world of imagination where problems have solutions, choices have weight, and stories unfold at a human pace. That presence is healing. It offers a kind of focused calm, even in chaotic moments. The spirit of adventure knows how to anchor you in the moment, inviting you to pay attention, to participate, and to care. Painting invites that same kind of presence. When you're focused on blending a highlight or refining a detail, everything else fades into the background. It's meditative, grounding. You're fully present with your hands, your tools, and the tiny world in front of you. That mindfulness is part of why painting pairs so beautifully with D&D. It taps into the same part of the soul that loves immersive play. Adventure also nurtures imagination. In a world that often pushes us to be practical or efficient, D&D gently reminds us that imagination isn't childish or frivolous. It's profound. Imagination builds stories, connects people, and fuels creativity. The spirit of adventure celebrates imagination in all its forms: dramatic roleplay and silly table jokes and clever solutions, wild theories and emotional revelations, and unexpected decisions. Every imaginative spark enriches the story. Painting nurtures imagination in more tactile ways. When you pick up a brush, you're making choices to bring a tiny character or piece of terrain to life. You choose the colors and the mood and the visual energy. You decide whether they look pristine or battle-worn, elegant or wild. Imagination flows through every stroke of the brush. Adventure also thrives on pacing. There are moments of fast action, combat and chases and urgent missions, and moments of slow reflection, research and campfires and quiet conversations. Both kinds of moments make the story whole. Without the fast moments, the story lacks tension. Without the slow ones, it lacks depth. The spirit of adventure balances these rhythms with care. Painting has pacing as well. Some steps are quick and instinctive, like laying down base coats. Others are slow and meticulous, like freehand details or blending. The contrast between quick and slow creates a satisfying flow. Adventure mirrors that same rhythm. Adventure teaches empathy. When you play a character who isn't like you, someone with a different background, worldview, or emotional landscape, you learn to see through new eyes. You practice understanding. You practice listening. The spirit of adventure gently encourages that openness. It invites you to explore perspectives beyond your own in a safe and creative environment. Painting can also evoke empathy in its own way. When you paint a character, especially one you've played or grown attached to, you start thinking about their story, their experiences, their challenges. Bringing them to life visually can deepen your connection to who they are. Adventure often focuses on stakes. Not just the physical stakes of life or death, but the emotional stakes. The bond between party members, the safety of a beloved NPC, the fate of a hometown. Emotional stakes make stories resonate. They give players something to fight for beyond treasure or experience points. The spirit of adventure cherishes that emotional depth. Painting can also reflect emotional stakes. A miniature painted with attention and affection often carries an emotional weight. It's not just a figure. It represents memories and moments and personal investment. Adventure values curiosity. It rewards players who ask questions, who poke at the edges of the story, who explore abandoned structures and mysterious forests. Curiosity is the compassion that guides the party through the world. The spirit of adventure is fueled by questions. What's behind this door? Who left this artifact? Why is this village abandoned? Painting values curiosity too. What happens if you glaze this color? What happens if you push the contrast higher? What if you try a technique you've never used before? Tiny experiments can lead to beautiful results. Adventure also celebrates discovery. Not just a discovery of treasure or lore, but the discovery of identity, who your character is, how they react under pressure, what they care about. You learn about yourself through the choices you make in fictional worlds. The spirit of adventure guides that discovery gently, but powerfully. Painting involves discovery as well. You discover what you enjoy painting. You discover your style. You discover techniques that feel natural in your hands. You discover patience, persistence, and pride. Adventure creates community. Friendships form around tables, whether virtual or physical. Shared stories create bonds that last. Inside jokes become part of the group's culture. The table becomes a safe place, a comforting space, a haven of creativity. The spirit of adventure fosters connection. Painting communities bring that same warmth. Painters cheer each other on, share progress, offer advice, and celebrate milestones. The creativity binds people together. Adventure expands imagination outward. Characters inspire worlds. Worlds inspire campaigns. Campaigns inspire stories. Before long, the creative energy stretches into art, writing, crafting, and conversation. The spirit of adventure is endlessly generative. Painting expands creativity inward. You refine your eye for detail, your patience, your understanding of light and color. The miniature becomes a tiny mirror of your creativity. Adventure ultimately becomes something deeply personal. Even though it's collaborative, it touches each player differently. It lifts different emotions, sparks different memories, and resonates in different ways. The spirit of adventure doesn't impose meaning, it invites it. Adventure also invites reflection as it evolves. When a campaign reaches its later stages, when characters have grown and the world has shifted in response to their actions, players often find themselves looking back, remembering early missteps and old allies, the first hints of mysteries that now feel enormous. That reflection gives depth to the journey. It reminds everyone how far they've come. The spirit of adventure holds space for that reflection, honoring the path that led to the present moment. Painting holds space for reflection too. When you finish a miniature and place it beside the ones you painted months or years ago, you can see your own evolution, your growth, your improved techniques, the risks you now take with confidence. The miniature becomes a quiet testament to time and creativity. That reflection can be grounding and even inspiring. Adventure also embraces endings. They can be emotional or bittersweet, triumphant, heartbreaking, or open-ended. A good ending doesn't tie every thread neatly. It completes the emotional arc. The spirit of adventure understands that endings are not failures, they're milestones, markers of the story lived. And even when a campaign concludes, adventure doesn't truly end. It settles into memory and waits for the next spark, the next character, the next gathering of friends. Adventure is timeless. It lives in every edition, every table, every group of friends who decided they want to tell a story together. It belongs to the past, the present, and the future all at once. The spirit of adventure doesn't age, it doesn't fade, it doesn't grow tired. As long as imagination exists, adventures will always have a home. Adventure also thrives on hope. Hope that the party will succeed. Hope that the dice will cooperate. Hope that the story will unfold in satisfying ways. Even in dark or dangerous campaigns, hope flickers at the edges. It's what keeps characters pushing onward. The spirit of adventure nurtures that hope gently, knowing it fuels the entire experience. Adventure is, at its core, an act of imagination shared between people. It's a willingness to play, to wonder, to step outside the ordinary and embrace the extraordinary. It's a celebration of stories, emotions, creativity, and connection. The spirit of adventure is not something fragile. It's something resilient. It endures because people nurture it, at tables, in conversations, in communities, and in quiet moments when they sit down to think back on the adventures they've been on. Adventure asks you to be brave, not in a dramatic sense, but in a creative one. Brave enough to try new things, brave enough to experiment, brave enough to care about fictional people in fictional worlds, brave enough to let yourself play. The spirit of adventure whispers encouragement every time you hesitate. Go on, see what happens. Adventure also teaches acceptance. Acceptance that stories change. Acceptance that plans go sideways. Acceptance that characters evolve in unexpected ways. Acceptance that you can't control every outcome. The spirit of adventure reminds you that unpredictability is not the enemy. It's the magic. Adventure, in its purest form, is shared joy. It's the joy of discovery, the joy of creativity, the joy of connection, the joy of being part of something larger than yourself. It's the warmth of laughter around the table, the thrill of rolling dice, the satisfaction of watching stories unfold. The spirit of adventure is joy in motion. And now, as we wrap up this long, cozy exploration of the spirit of adventure, with brushes rested and imagination still humming in the air, I just want to say how special it is to share these moments, both the painting and the storytelling, with you. The spirit of adventure lives in every choice we make as creators, players, and dreamers, and it's a privilege to explore it together. Thank you so much for joining me here today on this little journey through what makes Dungeons & Dragons feel so endlessly magical, so warmly familiar, and so inviting every time we return to it. I hope you'll be back with us next time. Bye!